Hello and welcome. Welcome to the Retired Athlete Post-Sport Profile of All-Star Athletes. Today we are here with Charley Patterson, Pro Wakeboarder, and we're going to get to him in just a minute because I know we've got lots to hear. But before I do that, and if you've never met, hey, wanted to introduce myself. I am Janae, founder of Transition What Now, where I help others and support you in your life's transitions. And I am an author, entrepreneur, wife, and homeschooling mother of 5. And I've led over 2,000 live webinars. So I'm very excited tonight because we have these all-star pro sport profiles are really exciting, every little different sport and the way that we go about them. So let's start though from last week. Every week we do homework. Last week homework, it was a video specifically about retiring from sport. And the homework was just to take a look at that video and share it with a friend. Okay, so there wasn't any specific thing about what you learned other than just sharing it with somebody that you know that might be going through that. Okay, nothing too intense. And that is at Transition What Now. Again, we just launched the YouTube channel, so do check out YouTube Transition What Now as well. Subscribe and like that page. All right, let's get to it with Charley. So I'm going to do a little intro about who Charley is, and then we'll start the questions. Charley was a 10-year pro wakeboarder, and for some reason we wouldn't move forward. That like brought more light on us. I don't know what he did. He is also married to a pro athlete who you will see hopefully soon on Transition What Now as well. And they together have 5 kids. So not many of my athletes that we get to interview have 5 kids. But here's the thing. Oh, I meant to say, do you have a picture on your phone of your kids?
I do.
Okay, so while you're pulling that up, I'm going to talk. Find
Okay.
Because I want him to show a picture of his kids because, you know, many of you know that I have 5 kids, but I had like, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 kids separately, all of that. And what's cool about mine is it's boy, 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 girl, so that's kind of fun. But Charley has a unique family that they have. Ready for this? Here's the pic.
So you can see it. You see that?
Yeah. Okay, so if you'll notice, there's Charley and his wife, baby girl Charley, and then quadruplets. Is that amazing? What a blessing. So we could do a whole nother show about that, I'm sure. But that's for my Rock Motherhood. I should have your mom on Rock Motherhood. So
she is an amazing, amazing mother, yes.
Oh, that's really cool. So I will say, too, that they have all 4 of them in bed by 6:45. Done. Pretty impressive. All right, so back to Charley. What's pretty unique about his sports career is he's going to share a little bit about how he got injured, and then he kind of definitely took on other aspects and unique things in his sport that helped him in his sport gain business skills that he could use for transition. So we'll talk about that, too. All right, so Charley, let's begin with the fact that you were recruited for football, wrestling, and track and field to the University of Oregon, and you ended up being a track and field athlete. What event? I didn't know
pole vault.
No way.
Pole vaulting. Mm-hmm.
That's something gymnasts transferred to pole vault pretty well.
Very much.
Okay, so pole vaulting, and what had you in that time run to wakeboarding?
Well, so just details. I was recruited to UCLA for football, and then after the state championships here in Oregon, and I grew up here in Central Oregon, the pole vaulting coach was at the state championships at Oregon. It was held at Hayward Field, and after I got done, he approached me and offered me the opportunity to do track and vault for Oregon, and so I ended up going there and forgetting about all other sports at that time. I was studying biology and exercise movement science. So the goal and what I thought I wanted to do at that time was actually be a doctor. And so I was really good at math and sciences. So it just made sense. I like little kids, so I'll be a pediatrician. And I got into my 3rd year of school there.
You kind of are a pediatrician now, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah.
I am. The doctor thing played out just in different ways. And so while I was doing my volunteer work at the hospital there right on campus, I started to observe and just really pay attention to the atmosphere, and the nurses and the doctors were really cranky they really didn't appear, in my perspective, to enjoy what they were doing. And a lesson that I'd learned from my father when I was younger was anything that I wanted to do or thought about doing, go have a conversation with someone that has done it, and is where you believe you would want to be, to see if they have what you want. And so I sat down with multiple doctors, and when I asked them about their lifestyle, which was a big reason I wanted to be a doctor, was I wanted what I perceived to be their lifestyle. And when I talked to them, they had no leverage. They had to work all the time. If they stopped, they were in trouble financially, and they really didn't enjoy what they were doing as much as they thought they would. And so, in addition to like debt and all the other things that we talked about, so it was very clear to me at the time, if I continued to pursue that direction, I wouldn't have what I wanted. And that's when I started to ask the question, like, okay, what do I want to do? Which is a second lesson I learned from my dad, is what is it that I want? And I started looking for, like, okay, I trusted and believing that the universe, my higher power, would present it in front of me, what was the next chapter of my life if it wasn't going to be that. And so I was sitting in a boat about 6 months later in Lake Tahoe, California, saw someone wakeboard, a brilliant rider, a guy named Kobe Mikasic, who was a new pro at that time, the very beginning, 1994, and the guy just blew my mind. I mean, I could not believe what I was seeing, and I immediately just had vision for it. I could see the sport being massive. I could see that it was going to be big enough that there was a fear of loss for me. Like if I didn't do it, I would be left with regret and asking myself, what if I don't do this? And that just wasn't, the thought of failing at it was small in comparison to living with it for the rest of my life.
So there you did. You just went.
Well, it was a form of stress, but actually 3 days later I made the decision. I called up my family and my coach at Oregon and my friends, and I said, I'm dropping out of school. I'm going to take my redshirt year and move to Florida, and I'm going to learn to wakeboard, and I'm going to become a pro. And that's when, everybody said I was crazy. And thankfully my dad told me, good, do it, yet you're paying for it, which was a huge, huge piece of success. And then, I just realized I had such vision for the sport that, I could see myself in the boat. Hanging out with girls in the boat, bathing suits. You don't have to, I was like, that time, you don't have to pay me much money to do that. I can make money doing that. So it just all made sense, and I was willing to do whatever it took to make it happen.
So you moved to Florida, right?
Yeah, loaded up my car here in Central Oregon, boat, drove to Orlando where I'd never been ever before.
Jeez. And so early on, Charley, you got injured and couldn't compete, right? Maybe 1 year into it, was it?
Yeah, it was actually, I think, the end of my first full season on tour. I blew out my knee for the first time.
So you got injured, and what I want to ask is, what other avenues did you create, or kind of honeypots that you dipped your hands into in the wakeboarding world because you couldn't compete and make money that way?
It was a unique time because I didn't know it when I was first seeing the sport, but I then learned that it was the very beginning when I got out there, and there were only 30 pros in the world, and so I could be 31. And so it was like everybody had their hands in a lot of different things. The sport was being run by water skiers who didn't wakeboard. Some retired water skiers. We were on the Water Ski Pro Tour. So as I got hurt, my mind and on magazine covers and in articles, I was referred to as Mr. Business. It's just the way my mind has worked. I come from an entrepreneurial family. We've had family businesses in Central Oregon the whole time I was growing up. So it just was wired that way that I started to look for other ways to kind of create a big safety net, because I was in the beginning of my career. And in action sports, the lifespan of your career is really determined by how good your brand, your self-brand is built before you have your first injury. And so thankfully I'd built a good brand for myself, but I started looking for opportunities contributing to the magazines. The magazines, they need content and understand all of the...
So they already had wakeboard magazines.
They already had Wakeboard Magazine, Water Skiing Magazine, and there was some other new magazines popping up that all needed content.
And because I was sharing, so I grew up on a lake, and in 94, 95, I was still in we didn't wake, my lake I feel like is like 10 years behind. Like we didn't wakeboard yet. We were still water skiing, and so this was the cutting edge of wakeboarding. I mean, yes, and again, it obviously had started, but it hadn't taken off to like it did a little year later.
Yeah, first generation. I mean, thankfully we're the biggest money
First
makers.
generation, that's kind of cool.
You know, and pioneers of the sport, and so.
So you did magazine stuff.
Yep, I started judging on the pro tour and driving the pro tour for wakeboarding, and that was when really understanding like, wow, right now the sport is being really driven by water skiers who don't understand the fundamentals of our sport.
Yeah.
We didn't believe as athletes, and so started.
Is it like skiing and snowboarding?
Very similar, yeah. So it's very well. Skiing has now progressed based on the influence, but unfortunately, some aspects have translated to water skiing. But wakeboarding was really subjective, and right at that point, we were really judged on like criteria of landing a move like trick skiing versus the subjectiveness of how you would add your own style to it.
Okay.
So we created the Professional Wakeboard Association. I was the president and rallied up the athletes, and we took control and ownership of our sport. Excellent. And that's when we started our pro wakeboard tour, and things really started to evolve. I started a mobile marketing business with my best friend John Lindsay, my big brother at University of Oregon, and we put tour buses on the road with athletes, me being the first one, and it was just guerrilla marketing at the best, like 30-foot pictures of myself on the side of the bus and two single guys roaming around North America and going to the tour stops and retailers. And that was when I just really learned what the job of a pro athlete was in action sports was sales. Yeah. Like you have to increase, I believe, in my perspective, that you have to increase sales for your sponsors, otherwise you don't have value. On water, off the water, now with social media.
I feel like that's even more so now. So for you to even understand that back then was pretty impressive.
Gosh, if we had social media, it'd been like so much easier. I mean, we didn't, but
yeah, you guys have it easy out there. I don't follow a ton, but some influencers, on social media, and I'm in the gymnastics world, and so I don't know if you've heard of Shawn Johnson, and she was an Olympic gold medalist, but she just had a baby weeks ago, and it's like I'm all excited about this, and her platform is all like stories and Instagram. It's just all because of that. And Simone Biles, same thing. Like it's
a lot of responsibility and a lot of eyes, obviously, but it's there are benefits and equal drawbacks.
So you did a great job, though. Like that's kind of rare, as I am also doing the book for injuries, that a lot of people when they get injured, it's like, man, I'm done. Like this is awful, and they're down, and they just try to work on getting back in their sport, but I think it was really unique how you then said, hey, there's other opportunities for me to kind of start doing this, this, and this, and this, instead of wallowing in like, blew out my knee. It's really cool.
Yeah, that perspective, I love the study of quantum physics and quantum mechanics, and just the bare definition of it is choice, right? Like choosing which perspective that you're going to have on a situation. And that's like, okay, I'm injured. All right, how do I turn this perceived negative into a positive, because there's an equal balance of that positive out there, and how do I go create that? And that was what I constantly looked for, asking that question, and you give the answers. So.
Good. So how did you know when you were done and it was time for life beyond the wakeboarding world?
Something I never imagined, and it was, I kind of lump everybody in with my story, as I think we do as human beings, but a lot of athletes have similar stories, professional athletes, not coming from, say, money. I left my house and my dad said, great, you're leaving, like you're leaving with what we taught you. You're not leaving with money, and we're raising our kids the same way. Like they leave with what we teach them. Yeah. And that, after kind of going from that and making the success financially that I had with wakeboarding, it was really scary, because of all of a sudden just one day, I was like, whoa, when I stop, my money stops. And I'm like, here I've got this like CEO income, and lifestyle, and I'm going, what the heck am I going to do with the rest of my life? And so that started my wheels turning, because I was in my 10 year, And then realizing, like, just one day, like I had a lot of injuries. And so you hit a point where there's just fear. Yeah. Like I developed fear for the first time in my life. Like there was no fear. Then all of a sudden I was like, wow, if I hit that obstacle, this could happen or this could happen. And like, that could kill me. And after enough of those injuries that almost some of them were life-threatening, it was like, okay, I'm scared now. So that felt like it's time and it's gonna be over. And then one day I put my feet on the ground getting out of bed, and I just, that fire of, you know, wanting to go out and crush it and just kill it and be as entrepreneurial as I could, I was just done. The fire was gone, and I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. And that was wild, huh? Out of nowhere. Yeah. I mean, just snap fingers, whoa. And staying in the industry was not an option. I didn't feel like, because I would make like a tenth of what I was used to making if I took a job or did something that didn't sound like fun either.
Good stuff. So what are the 2 principles your dad taught you that you've talked about a little bit, but we've talked about, that have been a catalyst for success in all the other aspects of you transitioning out in business, a wonderful wife, 5 kids? So what are those 2 successes?
And I gotta say this about my kids.
Yeah.
I have one daughter that's 4, and I have 4 that are 1, all with the same birthday.
Oh, wait, what?
Yeah, all
your
my
older
kids
daughter
have the same birthday.
No.
Yeah, we could do a live for hours and hours and hours. I also
we have 5 of us in 1 month. I thought that was crazy.
That's cool.
Yeah, but one day.
Same day. Yep, same day.
You don't have to tell me that.
And then coming up, so I get to say that 4 and 1 and 1 and 4 because in 2 months their birthday is coming up on January 6th. And
they're gonna have a big day.
Yeah, big. We make it a week. Anyways, I also, as you referenced, I set a goal of meeting my wife in 90 days, and then about 30 days into that.
Wait, can I back you up?
Yeah.
So I'm done. Feet on the floor. I'm done.
Yeah.
Then you made, I want to meet my wife.
No, this is, I'm kind of backing up into it to lay the foundation.
You're
good.
Know what
you're
doing.
good. You're on track. So I set a goal to meet my wife in 90 days, and my coaches that I was working with asked me if I was open for a challenge, and I said yes. And they said, meet your wife in 24 hours. And I met my wife 8 hours later.
Okay.
And that was all based on the same principles as you're asking about. And then the same with business goals and achievements, and then wakeboarding was the same. Okay. It's, to me, business is the new sport for me. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to meeting my wife, it was the same as athletics. Having quadruplets when your first 3 doctors tell you have to reduce to 2 kids from 4, and that you can't do it. Mm-hmm. Like, just tell me I can't. First of all, that's the best thing. Mm-hmm. Tell me something's not possible. Mm-hmm. And then, but it was, my dad always taught me to focus on what I wanted and to begin with the end in mind. And so having a goal, like you had a goal to come here and do this live at my house, and you set a time, and when you were gonna, that dictated when you were gonna leave and how fast you had to drive and all those things. Everything that I've done in my life, I ask questions, and the outcome of it, the quality of what we get is always determined by the quality of the questions that we ask. So first, what questions am I asking, and what am I looking for? And that was every single time I had a roadmap. I had a list of what I was looking for, and I was specific. Mm-hmm. And I just didn't accept anything that wasn't that list, and there was non-negotiables. There was non-negotiables on my wife. There was things that were must-haves on a career. Same thing after I met with those doctors and wakeboarding. These are the things that I wanted. And then with transitioning out of wakeboarding, I learned, like, wow, I've got linear income. Yeah. And it's really good, but it doesn't matter how much money you make. If it's linear, you can never stop. And like, I didn't like that lack of control, and I wanted to build something that had leverage. So if I wanted to stop someday, it didn't matter financially. And so I made those lists of things what I wanted. And so beginning with the end in mind and setting those goals and asking those questions, but then also knowing that, quitting, number 2, or lesson number 2 here is that quitting's not an option. And because every time that I wanted to quit something, which wakeboarding was included in that, and my dad, or all my sports prior, and my dad said, no, you can choose not to do it next season, but quitting is not an option. And because repetition is the mother of skill, it was like shortly after that, I learned enough through the repetition and not quitting that I was able to celebrate some success, like you had in gymnastics, of repetition, and improvement. And so I just knew with that foundation that anything that I set my sights on and I was willing to have delayed gratification with and put in the time and the energy, knowing where I was going with that, that I could achieve success with whatever it was.
Interestingly enough, with the list thing is, so I had a list written out on a little yellow piece of, it was I worked at Pfizer doing pharmaceuticals that I ran from, and I had a little piece of paper script that I had written all of my, because I came from a life coaching background, so we did the similar thing, and I had all these things I wanted in a man, and then I had a relationship that I broke off, and then I had to edit it, right? Like in my red pen is like, I need this or not this, and so same thing, like, and I was like, this is what I want, specific, right? So then when I met my husband, and I did that, I was in San Diego, he was in LA, and when I met him, he had a list too, and it was on yellow piece of paper, and we still have them.
Yep.
So y'all are looking for a relationship, husband, and so what was interesting though is when we compared our lists, or like, he looked at his list and me, and for one thing it was like, 5'2" to 5'10", and he's like, well, I just didn't know anyone who was 4'11", so I didn't meet that requirement, but it wasn't a deal breaker if I was 4'11" and not 5'2", so there's definitely things like that on there that weren't total deal breakers, but same thing, like we weren't meet everything, but for the non-negotiables were there, and it was really cool. So that's wild.
It's powerful. It works if you work it.
Yeah. So what are your current business ventures?
15 years ago, one of the questions that I asked, looking how do I create leverage, I knew I would find someone to be able to learn that from, or what it was going to be the next chapter of my life. And I literally thought about it that way, like this chapter's closing. What's the next chapter of the book? And of course, just like all the past, I met this man that offered to mentor me and teach me how to build leverage and build an asset that if I want to retire, I would have the choice and control of my life and build financial independence. Right. And so I love the lifestyle that I had before as an athlete, but it didn't come with financial independence. Yeah. And so over the last 15 years, after him helping me achieve that and working with him, and I still work with him and mentored him in my life in so many different ways. Now I've been doing that for the last 15 years, is helping other people achieve financial independence and build some leverage in their lives.
Awesome.
Yeah, which I love. I love coaching, teaching. Yeah. It's how I'm wired.
Yep. And how about advice to those currently in the throes of sport retirement? What advice do you have for them?
The biggest thing I think is, and my wife went through it after I did, retiring from professional wrestling, and then so many of our friends, they're just, birds of a feather flock together, right? Like we're just surrounded by other athletes. And it's, for me, I know it's helped myself and my wife transition successfully. And I believe is a key ingredient is having something that you transition to. And the big challenge I dealt with and shit is like, okay, are we actually what we do? And I've learned, no, I'm not a wakeboarder. That's not.
And he didn't even watch my session on identity.
Not yet.
Wow. Not yet. Oh yeah, you'll feel yourself in. But yeah, exactly. You're not what you do.
Yeah, and you have to learn that, right? Because you have these, as an athlete, you show up and you're being promoted, or you're being paid to be there and promoted, and people are expecting you there, and it really is all about one person, and huge ego, and so once you retire, it's like, what saved me was retiring into that, where I found something to be coached in. I found a mentor that would guide me and help me achieve what I want. So I began with the end in mind once again on what I wanted to achieve as an outcome. And I found somebody that had what I wanted, right, in the outcome. and then just was super coachable to achieve it. And then it turned it into not only being mentored, but then mentor others in the process. So I think whatever it is that you want to do, make sure that it's in your highest values, which is not static. Your values change. But as long as you stay in those highest values and have goals set in alignment with them, then you'll have delayed gratification and vision and language that will talk to you in regards to I can, I will, no matter how long it takes. But you got to have something else. You're not what you do.
That is right on, man.
Right
Very
on,
good.
man. You got a high five?
I can. I know how to do that. So that was perfect. That especially, that advice that you don't get everywhere. So take it, run with it, and know that your life beyond sport is the best is yet to come. So thanks for coming on tonight. We'll see you next week. Same time, same place for Retired Athlete Facebook Live. See you later.
Bye, guys.